Hey folks, what's up? This is Adam here. I can't see a guy. Welcome to the Movie Vault. I'm kind of emotional right now. Kind of emotional because I've just watched a movie which I've seen countless times, but I've just rewatched it again because I've been in a bad mood nearly all weekend. It must be my bipolar playing up again, but I've been in a bad mood nearly all week, nearly all day, and mostly all over the weekend. And people always says one good cure for curing a time when you're really down is to put on a film. You know what I mean? And I said to myself, there's so many films to choose from, to enlighten your mood. Whether it's a comedy film, whether it's a horror film that you really enjoy, or even a shitty low-budget horror movie. That's a guilty pleasure. But then I was looking through all these bunch of movies, and the movie that I came across and decided to watch in the end was this movie right here, The Nutty Professor from 1996, starring Eddie Murphy. Now, I said at the start of this review that this film got me emotional. It got me emotional because this was one of my mother's favourite films, and my mother is no longer with us. She's in heaven now, and she adored this movie, The Nutty Professor. Her favourite movie of all time was Nutty Professor 2, and she loved Eddie Murphy. She loved his films, but her favourite film was Nutty Professor 2, and her favourite character was the Grandma Clump. That was her favourite character. And every time I watch the Nutty Professor 1 or Nutty Professor 2, I always smile. Because when it comes to a comedy scene, yes, I know it's mainly about fat jokes and fart jokes, but it can be about any scene that's funny in these movies because it reminds me of my mother, and I could still hear her laughter in my mind. I could still picture her in front of the TV, laughing till she has a heart attack, giggling, laughing to herself, laughing hysterically, because she did laugh hysterically at the first few times she saw this movie, The Nutty Professor. She just really took a big liking into these films, and I'll get emotional because, believe me, I do miss her, but there's loads of things you can remember a loved one by, whether it's a piece of music, a piece of jewellery, a photograph or whatever, but one thing that really does remind me a lot of my mother is the Nutty Professor films, because they were her favourite, and I always used to watch them with her. We saw these movies countless times, over and over and over again, up to the point where we knew what was coming next. We knew what the next character was going to say. We always knew what was going to happen next, but yet we never got tired of watching these movies because we were just so into them. Particularly this movie which I'm talking about now, The Nutty Professor of 1996. And yeah, I'll just mention the mainly about fart or fat jokes, and some people don't really laugh at those sort of things. I mean, I don't mind fat and fart jokes, but as long as there's not too much of it. But believe me, when it gets to part two, there's quite a lot of it. But Eddie Murphy pulled it off really great in this movie. I mean, what was so amazing about this movie is that he played multiple characters. He plays the leading role, Sherman Klump. He plays the brother, he plays the mother, the father. And he also plays Buddy Love, and he also plays the grandmother. So he's got a lot to do in this movie. Where in the first movie, the family of the Klumps are only shown like not so much. I mean, only the two dinner scenes and at the ending where the mother and father are at the ball party. Where Sherman is like fighting with himself with Buddy Love and all that kind of stuff. So, in number one, they didn't really show up as much. In part two, they were like everywhere, and that was a big advantage for my mother because she loved the Klump family. She said, "I'd love to live next door to the Klumps," she said, because one thing for sure, you'd always get free meals. Now, the first one has different moments. It has its moments of comedy. It has its moments of emotional. For example, when Sherman Klump is on a date with Carla Purdy, who, I like the Carla Purdy character. She's a sweet lady, and the actress who played did a great job. But, there's a scene in this movie where it gets emotional, where, because Sherman plays this professor at this college, teaching students. He loves his job. He's intelligent in his own way. He's very kind-hearted, he's very polite to everybody, but because of his weight, he feels very ashamed of it, and He's just completely ashamed of his weight, although he's very private about it. He always hides it behind a nice smile, and he's very private about it, but he gets very emotional when people make fun of him for being fat, just like any other normal person would. And like I say, that scene in the nightclub, the scream, where he's going back and forth with, Reggie, the Reggie character, the comedic on stage who makes fun of people in the audience. In the first time, it's Sherman and Dave Chappelle who plays Reggie. They're not going back and forth because Sherman's very shy, and he just sits there and lets Reggie make fun of his weight. And there's a scene where the sad music plays, everyone around him is laughing hysterically. Basically, he's being bullied for being fat, and you can really tell the emotion in his eyes is like very solid. And you feel for him, you really do, because he's a kind guy. He's a very polite guy. Just because you're overweight, it does say a lot of things about you when you're overweight, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person or an evil person for that matter. You can be the most kindest, most loving, polite person in the world, and you could be overweight, but it's a personal problem. It's a personal problem that a lot of people have to deal with in life, and I, for one, really don't like it when people make fun of other people for being overweight, because I used to be overweight once. So anyone who's overweight can really feel Sherman Club's pain in this movie, so the movie does get emotional, but on the bright side, there's lots of comedy. I mean, like I say, Sherman plays this professor who's kind-hearted, he's intelligent in his own way. The students love him, but there's a scene, where he's writing on the blackboard and his stomach's rubbing across the blackboard and the students are laughing. While he's away, he's eating a Snickers bar. Carla Purdy introduced himself, saying that she was a grand student and she's a big fan of his work. And immediately Sherman Clump falls in love with her. But with him being overweight most of his life, he's never been in love before. He's never had like a high school sweetheart or anything for that matter. Then the film skips to like where he's around the table with his family. Sherman is the only person who's trying to watch his weight while all his family are like gobbling down all these dishes of food, talking about fat people, talking about fart jokes and all that kind of thing. You get I like the chemistry between Father Clump and the grandmother, the way they go at each other back and forth. And Sherman's very emotional. He's trying to watch his figure, he's trying to watch his weight while he's watching the rest of his family dive into all the food. There's one or two fart jokes where the father farts at the table, and Sherman's very embarrassed. Although he loves his family, he gets really embarrassed by them, especially the second dinner scene. Where he invites Carla Purdy round for them to have dinner with them. He's introducing the girl to the family, but none of them would just take it that Sherman has never brought a girl home before. And although Sherman's trying to repeatedly say that they're just colleagues and they work together, they're trying to convince them that they're both trying to get together. And the whole movie, meal scene becomes a disaster again, where the father farts at the table in front of Carla Purdy, and it all becomes a one big disaster scene. And Sherman's very embarrassed and upset by it. He loves his family, but at the same time, he's very embarrassed to say that you people are an embarrassment, in front of me and the lady who I bring to eat dinner with us, that kind of thing. Which any normal son would. Okay. While all this is happening, and although Carla Purdy is taking a shining to Sherman wants to be the perfect man for her. So he's already doing an experiment on these hamsters, trying to make them lose weight, particularly this one hamster who's fat by the name of Shelley. And he decides to do an experiment on himself to become thin. One night after the night of being bullied by being overweight and having a bad dream, like a beach scene, where Carla Purdy's going into the sand, because he's lying on top of her. He does an experiment on himself where he becomes thin. And then that's when Buddy Love is created. I love that scene, where he's like, I'm thin, and it's showing like all the aerobic scenes. It's showing all the fitness scenes and areas in the scenes where he's now going into shorter clothes. He can eat whatever he likes, he will still remain thin. So, and basically the Buddy Love character becomes out of control because he's taken over Sherman's life. and he's stealing Carla Purdy away from Sherman. But Sherman Clump can't get enough of Buddy Love because he loves the new him. He loves being thin. He loves the fact that all the women fancy him, and the fact he can get his own back on people who are calling him fat. Because there's a scene where he goes to the Scream Club again with Carla Purdy, and again he's having that back and forth comedy. Your mother is so fat, and those fat jokes again start to prop up, and he's having like a back and forth war with Dave Chappelle on stage, and he gets his comeuppance when he throws him in the piano and all that kind of stuff. But on the way back in the journey in the car, he causes a car crash where he's transforming back into Sherman Clump with his #1 student, Jason. And then Sherman's realising that his life's getting out of control while having Buddy Love inside of him. You know. And he gets up to the point where he's trying to get Buddy Love out of his system. But one person I would like to mention throughout this film is Larry Miller. Larry Miller plays the school principal, Dean Richmond. Now, I like Larry Miller. You know, he's been in some films that I liked. I liked him in, what's it called now? The Carnival of Souls. I know a lot of people did not like that movie, but I like it. He always plays like the sneezy villains in type of some movies, and in this one he's just the same. He's another person who makes fun of Sherman for being fat, and all he cares about is making money out of him. So he's like using him to get money for his own benefit. You know, there's like an interview coming up, you know, where there's this guy by the name of what's his name now? Harlan Hartley. He's been interviewed. You know, where he's in like just like this youth formula to make people lose weight or get younger. You know. And what I like about this movie was the ending scene, like the ballroom scene. A lot of people says it was a bit out of sort, you know, where Buddy Love and Sherman Club are fighting with each other, and you get all these effects, you know, where 1 minute he's fat, 1 minute he's thin, and basically the Buddy Love character's trying to take over all of Sherman's body, basically, and Buddy Love remains in Sherman Clump's body. We confirmed that at the start of Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps, you know, the wedding scene, but you know, he's there apologising to everybody, saying that he was deeply in love and he was willing to go to them high lengths just to win the girl of his dreams. And the film ends with him and Carla Purdy dancing. You know, it was given a nice, good ending. But like I said, the Buddy Love character was becoming out of control because Sherman ends up getting thrown out of his house because he throws wild parties and all that kind of stuff. But he can't get a love of the Buddy Love transformation because of how people really appreciate and love him. You know. So, as you can tell by this review, there's a lot for me to talk about because I remember this film solid 100%. I mean, like I said, I just got done watching it moments ago and I'm glad I did because it really did cheer me up. I was getting all these flashback images of my mother, you know, laughing hysterically, whether she was even in the room or not, because she could be in the opposite room cooking dinner, and while I've got the film playing, you know, she could hear what's being said and she'd be laughing in the kitchen and all that kind of stuff. So that's one film I thank this movie for. That's one thing I do thank about this movie. The fact it gives me so many memories, gives me so many things in my heart that reminds me of my mother, who's no longer with us, and I'll forever remember my mother through the Nutty Professor films. You know, number 2 was her favourite because, like I said, the grandmother was her favourite Nutty Professor character. You know, how she was always horny and hot for young blood and all that kind of stuff. So, and she was given a lot more to do in the second movie, you know, with the Buddy Love character, which made her laugh even more, you know. But I'll never forget her laughter. I'll never forget her laughing spirit or anything like that when it came to this movie. But overall, I like this movie. Yes, it does have its fart and fat moments of jokes. A lot of people don't like that, but I don't mind it to a certain degree. But props off to Eddie Murphy. I mean, I've got to check out some more of his movies because there are 1 or 2 movies of his that I did not like. I did not like The Haunted Mansion. I didn't like The Distinguished Gentleman, you know. But I know he's been in other films like Norbit, which people consider his worst, but I've not seen that movie. I know he's in Dr. Doodle, and what other films has he been in? The Beverly Hills Cop and all those other kind of movies. Just like any other movie, I'm willing to see any movie with Eddie Murphy in it. I think he's a great comedian and a great actor. So I would be willing to check out some more of his films. But this film, The Nutty Professor from 1996, I like the fact that it's got its comedy moments, its emotional moments, and it's like leading in one direction. Number two was like sort of going like here and there, here and there, here and there. Let's throw in more of the family and all that kind of stuff. But I do like the Nutty Professor too. You know what I mean? And I will review that for another day. But this movie, Nutty Professor 1996, I recommend it for anyone who's like a comedy lover. I recommend it to anybody who's got a good taste in Eddie Murphy's movies. It is one I really do check out. I really hope they make a Nutty Professor 3 one day. I really do, but number two didn't got a bad reception, so I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, but glad I watched this. My mood is now lifted, and I feel much happier after watching The Professor, the first movie from 1996. Love the humour, love everything about it, and I really do recommend it to anybody. Thanks everyone, thanks for watching this review, and email me, go ahead and leave all your questions below. Thanks everyone, peace out.